other great apes, for example, gorillas and chimpanzees, probably have the potential for being much smarter than their current environment requires them to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really interesting notion. So you think that, and you do see this, according to the article, when a great ape is adopted in a human family and
Right.
is required to do more human things. Clearly, the potential for that intelligence was there.
Yeah. So the idea is, of course, that inputs. Put it like this: you're not born intelligent. You're made intelligent because of inputs. There has to be something there, some infrastructure. But if you don't fill it, if you don't develop it, and as you know, the brain is extremely plastic, and that's also true for primate brains. So you need to have these inputs. Social inputs enhance the signal-to-noise ratio. But of course, it really depends on what those social inputs are. Great ape inputs are not human inputs. So you might call it the bootstrapping problem, in the sense that if you could somehow, and that's what we do experimentally, increase the efficiency of those inputs, show these animals things that they would not normally see in the wild, then of course it turns out that with that same equipment, if you prime it properly, so to speak, you can actually reach much higher levels of cognitive performance, and that's in the end, the expressed realized intelligence is in the end what natural selection sees. The fact that they still have these big brains in the wild and they do relatively, for us, not so intelligent things with it is simply because of the nature of the inputs. They can't make those inputs any better than they are. If you can, then you can achieve much greater intellectual performance with the same brain.
And of course, we are also talking about various species here who already have the potential for pretty high intelligence. You cannot teach a cat to interact the same way as you can teach a great ape to interact.
Absolutely. But the other thing that it actually shows you is that if you would compare, say, an orangutan or a chimpanzee in the wild with a human hunter-gatherer, you would see massive differences. And yet, you could, now that we do these kinds of experiments, you could see that the differences are actually not as big, because with a great ape brain, if properly receiving proper inputs developmentally, you can actually achieve levels that are not as far removed as the human level. And so you could see how evolution had an easier time crossing that gap than you might, at least than we would have assumed before we knew this.